All right. Well, good evening, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to another Facebook Live. I appreciate the opportunity to be with you all remotely or digitally tonight and share a little bit about what's going on in the Keck for Kentucky campaign, tell you a little bit about what we've been doing, how we've been doing, and answer some questions. I'm really proud of the fact that we continue to answer questions directly from you, the citizens, and I thank each of you who have gone to keckforkentucky.com to send us a question. I don't take for granted that you would take your time and share your thoughts and your concerns and send your questions in. So we're going to get to that. But before we do, I just want to tell you it's been a great couple weeks. Happy New Year. If you haven't heard from me directly, we've had a big couple weeks. We ended December with a bang. As many of you have seen, we hit a fundraising goal of over $200,000, and we're really proud of that because we did that in just 40 days. That includes Thanksgiving, Christmas, record cold, and then, of course, New Year's, and we accomplished it anyway. And so people across the Commonwealth are investing in our effort, and that's really exciting. We outraised several of the top contenders, and if you look at what others spent to get to what they got to, we had an incredibly competitive quarter in spite of the fact that we only did it in about a third of the time. And so I think what that tells me is people like and are refreshed, if you will, by our approach. It's authentic. We're sharing our experience, and then we're casting vision. And in so many ways, that's not just unique in this race, but it's unique in politics. Candidly, this is unique. And whether 15 or 20 people tune in or 200 tonight, I think it's important that we take the time to speak directly to you, the voter, and the citizen who will be my boss. I think we have celebritized politics far too far. And it's time that the people take ownership back of their communities, their schools, their regions, their states, and then eventually our country. And that's my heart. One of the main reasons that I started in Somerset and now we're looking at taking this message statewide is I believe in local government. I believe in local control. I believe that government closest to the people is best. And with that, I want to focus on a Kentucky First message. You know, Washington is so broken. And in many ways, I'm not sure that there's an opportunity to fix it unless we will decide that we're going to transform our communities in our state brick by brick, state by state. And as a believer in the 10th Amendment, you know, the 10th Amendment states that all rights not specifically designated to the federal government remain sovereign to its people, to the states and its people. And so we need to get back to that. We need to make Kentucky more and more self-sufficient, where big brother government can't always dictate to us, you know, what we need to do, whether that's in exchange for road funding or education policy. We got to push back. And to push back, we've got to grow. We've got to get more financially sustainable and solvent. And that's what the Keck game plan is all about. You know, the Keck game plan focuses on economy, on public safety, on education, and on family. Real pro-life and pro-family policies that will encourage more people to have families and to do it in a broader way, make it more affordable, whether that's having kids, adopting kids, fostering kids. We need to make all facets of it easier. And I want Kentucky to be the most pro-family state in the Commonwealth. And so I see many more folks tuning in. I've seen a couple questions. I haven't read them, but I see them popping in. Some friends from Corbin tuning in. I appreciate that. Thank you. I really appreciate it. And what I want you all to know is occasionally I will take some questions live, and I might scroll back through here and do that tonight. But typically what I'd like for you to do is go to keckforkentucky.com. And I want you to send their question there where we can track it, where we can make sure that we get every question answered, but we also count them. I'm proud of the fact that by the end of tonight, I think I will have answered over 250 questions from citizens and the media. You deserve that, and we're going to continue our pledge that we'll answer every question. We're not going to duck the tough ones. And I recognize that every answer is not going to meet every need. There'll be some folks that are really passionate about an issue, and you might not like my answer. My challenge to you all would be, if you don't like that answer, demand it to the other candidates. I'm not going to use the word opponents, because the reality of this is they're just applying for the same job. They believe they're a fit to be governor of Kentucky. So do I. It's incumbent on each of us to tell our story, share our vision, and see where this thing goes. And so we're going to continue down this path. I have loved telling the Somerset story of success and getting across our state and answering questions and sharing why we've been successful and where we think it can go. And so I'm going to dive into some of these questions at the end of this. If you all stay tuned in, I intend to either scroll back through or take a couple from the live feed. But if you'll bear with me, we've got a bunch tonight. I'm really excited about that. I'd also encourage you all, to share this. If you think this is a good idea, if you're tuning in, put it on your feed. Let the folks in Kentucky know that you're interested in watching and learning and taking a peek. I know there's several that have already come through, and I hope, Leslie, I know you've popped in. How do you volunteer? Again, go to Keck for Kentucky. Thank you for asking that. And there's an opportunity for you to get involved, and I appreciate you asking that. And I think you've had a couple others that I'll try to get back to. The second thing I'll say is we've announced a series of town halls. We're going to be going throughout the state and answering these questions live in different communities. We'll be in Simpson County and Bowling Green over the weekend. I know we're in Northern Kentucky soon, and then Jessamine County the week after that. We'd love to come to your community and your county and talk to you and your citizens. And so share those town halls. If you're interested in me coming to your community to do one and answering these questions directly, please let me know. But I'm gonna dive into some of these questions tonight. The first one is from Leona S., and she asked, what are your plans for the forgotten eastern Kentucky counties of Kentucky? Places like Greenup, Boyd, Lawrence, Martin, Johnson, Floyd, Pike, Knott, Perry. Many counties without jobs, no hope. I can certainly empathize. For a long time, our county of Pulaski was desperate for jobs. We were really hoping for something new. And we hadn't had an industrial park created in over 20 years. We hadn't had a lot of new industry announced in over a decade. And we set out to do it a little bit differently. In Somerset, I've said we've got to stop apologizing for what we're not and start to be really proud of who we are. And I think in many ways that's the story for East Kentucky. I consider myself a part of East Kentucky, and we've used Somerset as a model. Rebuild your downtown, make it the heartbeat of your community, and then sell your community for the special place that it is. And so my heart for the rest of East Kentucky and the counties you mentioned is to focus on what's good and promote it as such, and then make sure that whoever the governor is, if I'm governor, be an ambassador for the whole state, not just certain parts. And I think we can bring that to your community, your region. And I'm not just talking about it. I have a history of success to prove that. Thank you for your question, Leona. Next question is from Jesse G. And they ask, would you support a school choice amendment to the Kentucky Constitution? A question back to you, Jesse. I'd have to see what that amendment looked like to say it specifically, but I do support school choice. I also support public school. I don't think that we have to pick between those two. I support homeschool. I think the left has painted us in a corner to say that we can't do both. My philosophy on education is we need to raise the bar across the board. Public school, private school, Christian school, if it's private, homeschool. Let's do better. Let's make this an exceptional state for education across the board. I think we've made some strides. I know that I loved my teachers in public school. My 3 daughters go to public school. The teachers that they have really care. But I also recognize there's places in Kentucky where public school has gone too far, and they're pushing issues that the majority of Kentuckians don't want. And I recognize the need and the desire to push back. And then also would just say that in districts where schools are really, really failing, families there need an option, and that's why I support school choice. The second question from Jesse, what's your position on red flag laws? And he asked about a Safer Communities Act. So 2-part question there. Red flag laws, as they're written out, I absolutely don't support. I think we've got to be really, really careful when we restrict citizens' rights to defend themselves and who gets to decide who has the right to own a gun or not. And so I don't support that. And then to your comment about the safer communities, candidly, I don't know a lot about it. But I'll make a commitment to dive in. I think that's another important distinction for me is good leaders are okay saying, I don't know, not trying to fake it. I haven't read enough about that Safer Communities Act, and so I'd like to take a peek before I weigh in, Jesse. And I think it's okay to say that. If you're not informed, then get informed and follow up. Sherry C. says, I want to know how you stand on Kentucky school teachers and their retirement. I did not vote for a former governor because of this very reason. He was against school teachers. He said some very not nice things. I didn't appreciate that. If you're not for the teachers, I will not vote for you. There's not a specific question in there, Sherry, but I understand your concern and your anger. I think that what I want you to hear from me is that I absolutely support public schools and their teachers, but I also don't think that means that parents shouldn't have a role or a voice or a seat at the table. And again, I think that's a lie of the left, that we can't be for public education and also expect some level of accountability. I adore so many of my former teachers, and they support me. I think that means a lot. Tonight we had an MMF celebration, Master Musicians Festival, and we announced the 30th anniversary for that tonight. And one of my favorite educators was there, and he's on the board, and he's a dear friend now. He was young when he taught me, but we talk politics a lot. He knows I love him, and we have gotten to a place where we're pushing too hard for these sort of zero sums or these absolutes, and I don't buy that. And so I absolutely stand with Kentucky teachers, but also with parents that are asking for a seat at the table. Next question is from Christy M. And she says, my question is coming from an evangelical perspective, and I ask on behalf of my church, do you support Israel? And do you believe in religious freedom? And the answer to that's an unequivocal yes. I think if you look at my resume and my record on Israel, I have been an absolute supporter for a long time. In fact, I was one of few Christians on AIPAC's National Council for several years, 2015 to 2017. I've taken a couple trips there myself, and a goal of mine as mayor, and it would still be as governor, and had COVID not happened, we'd already be there, is that I want a sister city in Kentucky for Israel. And I think that we need to support them both as believers, but also from a geopolitical standpoint. I don't view support of Israel as foreign aid. I view it as national defense. I think it's incredibly important for our country to have a strategic ally in the Middle East. I appreciate your question, Christy. Cameron F. asked, I appreciate your stance on making adoption more affordable for families. Does this include making it easier for same-sex couples to adopt? Yeah, the answer is yes. Look, I think that anybody that chooses to love a kid and take them into their home and is willing to do so, we need to make that process better and easier. And, my policy on family is for all families, and that doesn't look the same for everybody. Tiffany and I are really, really blessed to have 3 kids. But, I was talking to a dear friend earlier who adopted a girl, and that daughter is no less a daughter to her than my daughter's to me. And I can assure you of that. In fact, she cares a lot about her daughter, as much as anybody I know. And so I think that we have to be careful when we start to cherry pick, that desire. I've got another friend, he just tuned in, they're looking to adopt. And they have a son. They had a natural-born son. And I can guarantee you, if my friends that get to adopt, they're going to treat that, boy or girl with absolute love. And I guess I would equate it to this, Cameron. We love our families, right? You're born into a family and you have blood family. But you also have friends that, sort of your chosen family, that if there was a house burning down and there was a fire, you would absolutely run into that fire and get them. And you would be proud to do it, and you would be happy to do it. And so I don't know that we have to to try to draw lines on what distinguishes a family. You know, a family is centered around how you love and treat people. And so if we can make adoption easier across the board, I think we should. Lori L. asked, hi, on exactly when is the ballot going to be taken for governor in Kentucky? Appreciate that question. That one's a little easier than some of the other ones I've answered tonight. It's May the 16th of this year, so just over 4 months away. Priscilla M. asked, may I write a check? I cannot do a credit card. Hey, Priscilla, I would love for you to write a check. In fact, if you go to Keck for Kentucky, you should find an address, and if you don't, shoot us an email, and I promise you, we'll take that check. I'd be honored. By the way, and I know I bring a lot of interesting drinks in here, energy drinks, waters. If you've not had a Prime, they're pretty tasty. This is an ice pop. I chose it tonight because of the red, white, and blue. A little bit of coconut water, probably marketing, but it's sort of known as like an ultra hydrator. And those that know me well know I don't drink near enough water. And so I went with the Prime Pop tonight, a little hydration drink. If I eat too much or drink an energy drink before that, you know, sometimes I don't speak as well, so I'm trying to do a little better. Next question, Tom L. says, Mitch McConnell is the most lonesome of all rhinos, and at the least popular major political figure in America, do you support him? You know, the McConnell discussion is a fascinating one to me because, you know, there's a lot of people on both sides of that argument. You know, I'll say a couple things about Leader McConnell. You know, he's been in Congress or been in the Senate for a long, long time, and it is, I hear a lot of both sides. You know, he's done an incredible amount for the party and for the country, and really, if you kind of laser in, it's on the judicial branch. If you look at the federal people that he's put on the federal bench, judges, and then obviously our Supreme Court. I mean, he has gotten a ton done. You know, there's times, just recently, I did not care for the $1.7 trillion omnibus bill. Like, I don't think that was good policy for our country. And so back to these zero sums and absolutes. Look, I don't support him all the time. I think there's some things that I wish he wouldn't do. Maybe compromises too much at times, and I'm a compromiser when I think it's best for the overall good. But there's also some great things that he's done and great things he's done for Kentucky. And so it's kind of like coaching. You know, what's the grass is greener rule? Are you actually going to replace that coach with somebody better? And I think that's an analysis for us to make. And right now I'm focused on issues in Kentucky. And, you know, the leaders in the federal level will, you know, I can't control that at this point. You know, my focus is on making Kentucky a better place to live, work, and play. Brianna P. says, hey, so why are you running for governor when you don't even take care of the homeless in your own city? Why spend money on a university we don't need when there's families without a roof over their heads? And I just don't think your priorities are right. I thought you were a different kind of leader, but I guess all politicians are truly the same. Well, Brianna P., I'm going to put you sort of in the not a fan box. Speaking of homeless, that looks different for a lot of people. I mean, one, the city is 12,000 out of almost 70 in our county, and I get asked about it a lot. I don't see our county officials getting asked about it much. I hear more from folks who think that there's too much benevolence, too much help, than not enough. And when I ask people what they would do, you know, rarely do I get a real solution. If you talk about a shelter, typically that becomes a magnet. And so I think we have to be careful about that doesn't look the same for everybody. We've made a decision that we're going to continue to invest in ministries and nonprofits that want to help, that have the call. I don't think it's local government's role to provide permanent housing for folks that are in that situation, but we will continue to try to care and treat them as we can. And to your next question, we haven't. The university hasn't been funded at all by the city. We bought property in downtown in an area that was almost universally known to have a need for redevelopment, but there hasn't been a single dollar of public funds that have gone to the project, just the land, which the city still owns. And so that comment's not accurate. And then you're absolutely entitled, Brianna P., to your comment that you don't think my priorities are straight. That's what makes this country special. You have the First Amendment right to share that. And as always, I'm going to try to treat people respectfully. And so if you're a citizen of mine, I'll still try to represent you and serve you well. Next question comes from Josh B. It says, Alan, I continue to listen and appreciate your plans and views for Kentucky. Your heart of a leader in business sense leads me to ask this. Thanks for your kind words, Josh. It's been said the farmer is the only businessman that buys everything at retail, sells everything at wholesale, and pays the freight both ways. Man, this business plan is not ideal for the Kentucky farmer. What can you do in the role of governor to positively impact the business of ag and farming in the Commonwealth? That's a tremendous question, Josh. I just had a real cool opportunity. I spent some time with a local farmer. His name's Jeff. You'll see some content from that chat later. And Jeff has a family farm, and it's been here for 83 years. And I think he's been farming it for close to 40. And we talked about a lot of these things. The price of diesel being almost 3x what it was at one time, the cost of feed going up, and how the price of beef just continues to go and go and go. And most of that money's not going to the farmer. All he asked me to do, and I think it's really fair, is to make it fair for the farmer. And not for government to get involved and pick a winner and loser. But I used the example to him, and, it kind of made sense. We talked about the bourbon industry and how there's the 3-tier system, and the producer and the distributor and the store all kind of make, an equal share. And, I don't know if there's a lesson there or not. For farmers, but I think it's a model that we could at least look at to ensure that the people that are probably risking the most and doing the most work, which is the farmer, get compensated. It also protects the consumer because at some point, twofold, if the farmer goes away, we don't eat. And that's the biggest problem. But the other thing is we don't want all of that money to go to the consumer because then groceries aren't going to be affordable. And, Tiffany and I both work. We've got 3 kids at home. They're all growing. We understand what it's like to go to Kroger and have a couple $100 grocery bill, sometimes more than that. And we've got to be careful that it doesn't become unsustainable with this inflation to raise a family because then, again, people are going to have fewer and fewer kids. So great question. Thanks for weighing in. And thanks for – it's kind of random. That's the nature of these things. Somebody that's not a fan, somebody is a fan. 50 plus 1 gets it done. So that's okay. Chris R. says, hello, Mr. Keck. I just recently realized you've been answering questions on Facebook Live. I went back and listened to you address mine, and thank you for your discretion. I never wanted the details aired, but you tackled it head on and did the best you could. I remember that question, Chris. I think I didn't know it at the time that we're mutual friends, but it's a dear friend of mine who had some mental health challenges and took his life, and I didn't and won't talk about the details of that on air out of respect for the family. You go on to ask, in 2013, under Obama, it became legal for the government to propagandize you as citizens. Obviously, agencies always have, but now we're to the point where people's understanding of the facts are so manipulated that we only have a few ways to come back together. Both sides are led to believe that they're in a fight for their lives. Would you consider, if elected, to broadcast at least once a week to update Kentucky on the issues of our state and nation? Trump interviewed and tweeted more than any politician, and Andy Beshear televised for days on end. What do you think of making it a policy? You already earn my support. It's a fascinating question, Chris. I'm not going to commit to once a week. One of the things that I don't like to do is overpromise and underperform. What I would commit to do is doing it occasionally, but also just commit to being transparent. One of the things that I pledged in 2018 while I was doing these lives as candidate Keck is that if elected as mayor, I would continue to do Facebook Lives as mayor, and I've done that. Now we're doing them as a candidate again, and so I think it makes sense for us to do that as governor, and we try to do it as frequently as time would allow. I want to pause for a second. I see a bunch of questions coming in, and I'm not going to stop yet. I just want to tell folks Kayla, Michael, Lisa. I appreciate the questions. To keep these kind of streamlined and to make sure it doesn't become a free-for-all, I would encourage you to send those questions to keckforkentucky.com. I want to make sure that we track them, and I want to make sure that I answer every question. If we miss that, then send it again. I promise you it's not intentional. I also hope you see these captions. I've gotten a lot of pushback from folks in the deaf community and the hearing impaired, and they want to see these captions. We're doing our best. I'm listening to that, and I want you to know that we're going to try our best to accommodate that so that you can track the campaign. Jamie, I appreciate that. We're doing our best. Always a handshake at the Christmas parade, and if I miss you, there's a lot of people there, but thank you for that. Thank you for your kind words. Again, share this. If you're enjoying this, share it so your friends can see it statewide. If you'll take a peek at our Facebook page, you'll see that we have these town halls going on across the state where we're going to go on and answer these questions. I think by the end of this, I anticipate we'll answer well over 1,000 questions, and I'll put that up against anybody. Okay, back to the questions that have submitted at keckforkentucky.com. Aaron L. says, with the decline in coal and natural gas, would you be in favor of Kentucky seeking a grant to build nuclear reactors for energy production to help offset the loss of our power grid? Man, what a beautiful question. It's a loaded question, one that's going to require a tremendous amount of study. First of all, I think we need to produce more coal and natural gas. One of the beautiful things about Kentucky is that God has blessed this area with immense natural resources. Coal, gas, a little bit of oil in parts. And so we need to leverage that. We need to be proud of that. But to nuclear, it's a really compelling thing for me. I mean, I have been starting that research. There's some federal challenges that would prohibit it. I think there's a facility in Georgia that's been battling that for some time. Don't hold me to that. But in my study, I believe that's the case. I do think nuclear needs to be a part of the conversation long term. It is one of the most efficient, safest ways to generate power. But there are a couple key questions. What do you do with the waste? And what do you do in the event of a major episode? I think if we can answer those two, it could lead to energy independence in America forever. And, Elon, whether you like Elon or not, Elon's a genius and he's brilliant. He's been talking about nuclear. And so I would love for Kentucky to be at the forefront of something for once. We haven't been in decades. And take a peek at it. So it's something that my team is absolutely going to dive into. Laura P. has 2 questions. I'm a retiree of Kentucky. Thanks for your service, Laura. We have not been given a cost of living increase since I retired in 2013. I believe the last one was given about 5 years before I retired. What's your stance on COLA increases for retired employees? And as governor, how would you influence or support it? It's a fine line, Laura. I recognize, especially under Biden's inflation, how hard that must be. And to continue to stay on a fixed income with no benefit. But we're also balanced with a pension system that's billions and billions of dollars underfunded. Our current governor and his father have robbed that pension for a long time and put us at a deficit. And so I think it's critical that we make sure that retirees get what they were promised first. And then as the system gets better, look at COLAs. That's not a cop-out. The reality, though, is the math has to work. And so in my spirit, I would love to help. We just have to make sure the state can afford it. Next question from Laura. Is there a plan to negotiate with the insurance company to provide more reasonable costs for retirees? Currently, it costs me and my husband about $950 a month. Please look at Kentucky Breast Care for an understanding of the impact this is causing on women in central Kentucky. As a whole, many providers across the state are dealing with lower reimbursement rates from Blue Cross and Blue Shield. I've actually been dealing with that some personally. We have a provider that offers those services here and is dealing with the exact same thing. And so I would not only work with insurance companies, I need to work with our federal officials. We've got to be able to sell insurance across state lines. And I know the big insurance companies are going to hate that, but cost of health care is so punitive, not just in this state, but in our country. And it's ridiculous that we can't do better. Bonnie says, what are your plans to tackle the homeless and addiction population throughout Kentucky? Bonnie has 3 questions. That's the first one. Look, everything starts with hope and opportunity. Why does somebody end up homeless or on drugs? It's because they don't have hope or opportunity. And, hope without opportunity is just a dream or a talking point. And so we need more jobs, we need more people in the workforce. We need to sell this beautiful place. We need to market it more. We need to train up our young people quicker and better. There's so many things. Homelessness and addiction is a symptom of a broader problem. And so there's no quick fix. And I think we've got to address the things that lead to that. And that might not happen in a 4-year term or an 8-year term. But I can promise you, in a decade or 2, we would absolutely fill it. What are your plans to assist with our low-income population, to provide more opportunities, resources, and assistance? Kind of same thing. Look, the more jobs, the better. President Reagan was famous for saying the greatest social welfare program in the world is a job. And I don't just want jobs in Kentucky. I want career-worthy jobs and opportunities. That's what we've done in Somerset, and that's what we'll do statewide. Her last question, what are your thoughts on criminal justice reform? Do you have a plan to tackle the overcrowding of our prisons and jails, which is costing our state thousands of dollars and resulting in poor treatment? Yeah, we need more jails. Really the state's kind of failed our counties, though. The counties are left holding the bag. We do have an overcrowding population. These are some heady issues. I think the first thing is criminals need to stay in jail. But folks that are nonviolent, that have low issues, that might have, been on probation and have another small charge, end up in prison for a long time. That's to me where criminal justice reform has to happen, where we don't have, somebody spending 5 years in jail because they got caught with a drug when it didn't hurt anybody. Some of those common sense solutions I would support. Xavier asked, what is your goal for Kentucky schools protection? The goal is to get better, and you're not going to get better unless they're safe, Xavier. I've talked about raising the bar for our public, private, and homeschool opportunities, and that's exactly my plan, but also dedicating some resources to making our schools safer, making our teachers safer. It's not just the kids. We want to make sure that our teachers are safe and protected as well. And, okay, so this is the last question that I have. I'm just going to tell you, I'm going to take 3 or 4. So I know so many of you, and I apologize, so many of you have asked a question already. I'm going to ask that you bring it back after this one to the feed, because if I start to scroll, I will inevitably overlook some. So I'm going to take the next 3, maybe 4 that are asked online, and after that I'm going to wrap up for tonight. But again, kind of last plug, if you definitely want your question answered, go to keckforkentucky.com, share these posts. Let's spread the word. Let's ask this of other candidates. How many have they answered? Who are they answering them to? Do you know where they stand on all the issues? Or are we just saying the same old things? And I say that with respect, it's a quality field. Some of them are my friends. But this is a big job. Kentucky's electing a CEO, and we've got to get it right, or we're going to keep losing to our surrounding states. But the last question comes from Samuel C., and he says, what will you do for the disabled of Kentucky? I myself have limb-girdle muscular dystrophy and know all too well the struggles of being disabled. Samuel, first let me say I'm sorry for your challenges and your struggles, and I appreciate you asking this question. I'm also a Republican voter, Samuel says, and I believe in keeping America strong. I also believe in the Constitution and the old values and beliefs, and know what the Star-Spangled Banner is all about. All the people gave lives to keep Old Glory up and flying. What do you think about the Second Amendment? Me being disabled, I don't stand a chance if someone would try to harm me or my wife. I think you might be the one I vote for. Thanks for that question. I stand firmly behind the Second Amendment. I've said publicly now several times that so many of our rights, both God-given and protected in the Constitution, are dependent on the second staying protected. If we don't have the ability to protect ourselves and defend ourselves, then so many of these other rights are going to fall by the wayside. And so I'm absolutely a supporter. I personally own a lot of firearms. In fact, my brother and I and our wives own a sporting goods store, so I might own more weapons than anybody in the race, or maybe everybody in the race combined. But it's not just for self-defense. The Second Amendment also affords us the opportunity to have guns and ammunition for hunting, and for many people, that's how they provide food. And I think that's also important to note. And so I'll continue to be a strong supporter and defender of the Second Amendment. All right, so I'm going to start scrolling, and I'm going to pick the first 4 questions I see. Lisa asked, what would you do to stop the open borders, which is extremely harmful? We can't afford this. Those people have no incentive to join American values, and the drugs are out of control. I agree. We've got to have a closed border. I think it's absolute insanity, some of the money we waste as a federal government before securing our own borders. It looks like the Republican House is going to appropriate the funds to finish the border wall, and I support it. In addition to that, we need immigration reform. As governor, I'll be candid. We'll push and fight for some of those things. We might not have a direct voice, but we'll use whatever bully pulpit we have and influence we have to ensure that gets done, and stand behind our members of Congress in Kentucky that are going to be pushing for those things. Brian says, you're a selfless man with integrity. You've clearly done a great job, phenomenal job in your community. Let us know he can support you outside of Somerset. I know that answer. Just want to hear how you'd like to raise awareness. Well, that's kind, man. Thank you, Brian. I'm going to say time, talent, and treasure, man. Look, that might sound like a cliche, but everybody can't write a big check. That's okay. Write a small one or a big one if you can, but people that are willing to use their gifts that God gave them or their time to help me is humbling. And so if you have the ability to volunteer, knock doors, write letters, put signs up, make phone calls, I'd be grateful. Leslie asked, would you support the return of the Pledge of Allegiance in schools? Absolutely. To the schools that don't have it, they should have it. We pledge of allegiance every council meeting. And there's many council meetings that I pause and get a little teary-eyed because I'm getting to lead my community, lead the city that I grew up in, that I love, my hometown. And, we start by saying that pledge, and I'm proud to be a Kentuckian and proud to be an American. One more. That was 3. I see Sherry and David, Dennis, Leslie, Josh. I don't know if that's Mate or Josh or not. I got time for one more question. It's been an awesome day, long day. But I appreciate so many of you tuning in. This has been great. Any others? I'm going to scroll and find one then. I promised I'd answer 4 more. Claudette, you said something nice. Thank you. Here's one. It says, what would you do to ensure voting integrity? Florida has fixed their voting system. Would you be able to adopt some of the same practices? DeSantis is a wonderful governor, Lisa. I agree with that. I'll tell you this, though. Kentucky, Cody just asked one more, so I'm going to answer that one, too. Kentucky's done a great job. I commend Secretary Adams. He said 3 things. I don't remember all 3 during the primary and then the general, but I know 2 of them. He said, we're going to make it easier to vote and harder to cheat. And that's exactly what he did. We've only got a couple days early voting, but it's not so restricted that you only have one day. We've got a little bit absentee. And if you look at the elections that have been challenged in Kentucky, it's 99.9% accurate. So I think we're getting it right. I think Florida's getting it right. They're done in a day. It's not rocket science. I don't support federal elections, but I want states to follow our model and do better. And I think Kentucky's a model. I think Florida's a model. I'm going to blend these last 2, and then I'm going to wrap up. Cody says, in the least words, how are you different? And then Michael says, why you for governor? And so I'll close with those 2. And I'm going to give you 3 things that I think are really unique in this. The first one is I'm unapologetically authentic. And not in a braggadocious way or a boastful way, but you're going to know exactly where I stand on the issues. I'm willing to answer every question. And I think that's really important. I'm not going to change my answer based on where I am, by the way. I had 5 different meetings on one day this week, and it went everywhere from a hemp farmer to seniors to a group of pastors at the end of the night. And the message stayed the same because it's how I feel. And I recognize that there's going to be times where I answer a question and share, my heart on an issue, and you might disagree. But before you turn and run and vote for another candidate, have they answered that same question? Do you actually know where they stand? And that's going to be me throughout this. So that's the first one. Cody, this is not few words, but I think it's important. The second thing is my experience. I'm the only person in this field that has true executive experience. And not executive because I got elected to a statewide office, but because they've led a company, been a CEO of a business, had to make a payroll, had to pay payroll taxes, had to hire, but also had to fire, which is really, really taxing, understanding the challenges and the burden of that and growing a business when it's you and your family's money. But also have executive experience running the city. I'm the CEO of Somerset, community with over 400 employees and close to $100 million budget. And so my preparation is unique in this race. Again, I've said, and I'll stand by this, it's a quality field, good people. People that, if I wasn't in it, I'd be okay voting for, but they don't have the requisite experience that I do to take Kentucky to the next level. And so I think that's unique. And then the third thing is the best leaders have vision. They know where they want to take people or things, and they can articulate how and why. And I've done that. I haven't seen anybody else's plan. We all stand so similarly on issues on life and on guns and gun control and wanting to create jobs. And maybe even we stand the same on tax policy. But what else? What separates us? Well, the Keck game plan does. We talk about our economy and solving the growth and workforce crisis and tax reform. We talk about public safety and my history on investing in police and making sure that we continue to do that in word and deed. And education, where we raise the bar for everybody and we invest in teachers and school safety. And then finally, getting creative on pro-family policy that's, yes, pro-life, but it goes beyond that. And we talk about things like extended maternity leave, incentives for businesses, and parental leave. We talk about getting rid of the sales tax on things that are necessities for families, diapers, wipes, formula, both from children all the way to adults. And then finally making childcare more accessible and affordable. That's the Keck game plan. And I look forward to hearing other people's and debating these issues and why my experience, my vision, and my authenticity is unique. That's why you should vote for Alan Keck for governor, and we're going to take that message statewide. I appreciate y'all tuning in tonight and look forward to meeting you in person. Until then, God bless.